Well, hey, Southern Oregon, welcome back to the Real Estate Show. So glad you could join us today. We have Dave Arrasmith from Jackson County Tax Assessor's Office coming on the show because you know what? It is tax time. We're so happy he could join us. He's going to talk to us not only about what's going on in the market, he's going to talk a little bit about how taxes are calculated and maybe give us some historic perspective about property taxes in Jackson County. Dave Arrasmith from Jackson County Tax Assessor is going to be joining us here in just a quick minute. In the meantime, I want to touch on the local statistics for all three counties because we have a tiny bit of good news. Are you ready? Let's start with Josephine County. This is single family home residential only. Prices year over year in Josephine County are up 19%. Congratulations, Josephine County. The average residential home now costing $488,905. That's for residential in Josephine County. The number of homes sold in Josephine County year over year are down 45%. And that means we had 11 homes sell in Josephine County this week compared to year over year. Number of listings year over year in Josephine County are down 11%. We had 345 residential homes on the market this week in Josephine County. Now, Klamath County was also up this week. Prices year over year, that's two in a row. Prices year over year in Klamath County are up 18%. The average residential home now costing $397,540. The number of solds year over year in Klamath County are down 46%. We had 14 closings in Klamath County this week for residential. The number of listings in Klamath County are up 20%. We had 285 active listings in Klamath County this week. Jackson County prices were stable. They weren't up, they weren't down. So folks, that means we had two counties up and one county stable. We've been waiting for this. So year over year prices, Jackson County are the same as they were this time last year. The average single family home now costing $507,473. Jackson County number of solds year over year are down 22%. We had 46 closings in Jackson County, and the number of listings in Jackson County are down 10%. Year over year, we had 743 active listings. Stay tuned. We have a quick break, and we're going to have Dave Arrasmith from Jackson County Assessor on next. Well, top of the morning, Southern Oregon, and welcome back to the Real Estate Show. Boy, we have an exciting show for you today. We have Dave Arrasmith, our Jackson County Assessor, on with us today to talk about Jackson County taxes. Welcome, Dave.
Well, good morning. Thank you, and welcome to you.
This is a very interesting topic. Taxes are, people ask questions about them all the time, especially with real estate. And then our county has a different way of calculating, and that's a common question with people, whether they own homes already or they're just purchasing. How does all of that work?
Well, obviously, the simple math is it's the assessed value times the tax rate, and depending on where people live in the county, they could have a tax rate different than someone in another part of the county. The tax rate is a composite, a total of individual taxing districts within that area. So in Medford, you'll have the Medford School District. You're not going, so the people in Medford aren't going to pay a tax rate to this Ashland School District. So in Medford, we would look at what services are available in the area they live in. There would be, there would be a city tax and a county tax, road valley transportation tax, and a numerous individual taxing entities, and we add them all up and you get a tax rate of, say $12 per thousand or something. And then you multiply that total tax rate times the assessed value.
Okay. And so it's very hyper local. I think a lot of people don't realize what you just that comment you just made about the different school districts.
Exactly. So, people in the outlying areas may not be in so many, like way out in the boondocks, may not be in so many taxing districts. They wouldn't be in any city taxing districts, so that wouldn't be in their bill, and they would be in the county. They may not be in a vector control or Rogue Valley Transportation District. So their rates could be less than what you might find in downtown, people who live in downtown Central Point or Ashland or Medford.
Well, that's really interesting. So, is that why the taxes in the county and the outlying countryside are less than in town?
I would suspect, mathematically, if you had a $100,000 property in Medford and you had one out in the boondocks, if the Medford rate was say $15 per thousand, then you take 15 times 100 and you get a tax bill of, let's say, $1,500, where if they're out in the boondocks and they're not paying to the city of Medford, and maybe they're not paying to the Rogue Valley Transportation District or vector control or something, then maybe their rate is $12 per thousand. So in Medford, the rate they would come up with a $1,200 tax, where that same $100,000 value in Medford would have a $1,500 tax.
And that's really, really fair, isn't it? That's really, I think people don't realize how detailed the assessments are.
Well, that makes it pretty fair. The arguments that we hear where it's not fair is the assessed value in most cases is based on not the value that the property would sell for, but it's based on another number called maximum assessed value.
Mm-hmm. And what is that?
And that's a number that was created in 1997 when Measure 50 passed. And it, for those of you who are around, you would probably remember during the 90s, there was a kind of a taxpayer revolt in Oregon that was kind of followed what was happening in California during the 70s and 80s. And we passed two measures in the 90s, one around 1995, a Measure 5, where they capped, tax rates were capped so much, like $10 per thousand for cities and $5 per thousand for schools. And that law was, taxpayers didn't get enough relief out of that, so then they passed Measure 50 was passed. And so we calculate the tax, really, they don't see it on their bill, but we calculate a tax based on Measure 5, and we also calculate a tax based on Measure 50, and whichever of the two is the lowest is what shows on the tax statement.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think people realize that either. We usually just hear a lot of griping about taxes. That's why it's so good that you're here today. So when those measures passed, were there any repercussions profit-wise for the counties? Like, did you have enough money when that passed? And then do we now, decades later, do we have enough funding for what we need to do?
My memory doesn't go back that far. I was around then. But when Measure 50 passed, a permanent rate was created based on, I think, what the taxing districts were getting at that time. So whatever rate they were getting at that time, it became their rate going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And then as property value, as assessed value goes up, that fixed rate is multiplied times a number that's climbing every year. And maximum assessed value was created then to make that climb about 3% a year. So the tax rate is fixed and property, the assessed value in general is going up 3% a year, then people could calculate a 3% increase in taxes. And I think, that formula pretty much stabilized the taxes that could be received by the districts, but it also limited their growth potential to 3%. And that's the theory. I don't know that it always works that precise, but so Jackson County, for instance, they get a lot of public recognition that we're in very good financial shape. I don't know that we were in that good of financial shape back in 1997. And I think the cities and other districts are doing okay. Maybe school districts aren't, but I don't believe they get most of their funding from property tax. They get some state grants and stuff like that.
Yeah, they have a little different mix. But that the word you use, stabilizing the tax base, that does seem to be what we have here in Jackson County, some predictability.
Exactly. The taxpayer revolt going back in the 70s and 80s. I think in 1978, California passed, for your viewers who come up from California, they might remember Measure 13 was passed.
Yep. Proposition 13.
Jarvis, Howard property tax constitutional change that limited assessed value to a 2% growth. Well, in Oregon, we were having the same revolt, and this is where I'll say it's our property tax system. I think is pretty fair and at least acceptable compared to before Measure 50. In 1997 and up until then, this office was handling about 2,200 petitions, appeals every year. Property owners would file an appeal to get their property back.
2,200 a year.
Yeah. And then after MAV was created and limited the property assessed value basically to about a 3% growth, that made a drastic drop in appeals. And this, like the last few years, we've been averaging like 30 a year. That's
wow, countywide.
Because the BOPTA board only basically opens up for one day and maybe not even for the whole day, and they're done. They can hear all those, maybe 2 days, they can hear all those cases.
Wow.
In 1997, when we had 2,200 appeals, the Board of the Board of Property Tax Appeals, they would open somewhere in, say, mid-February, go Monday through Friday for 8 hours all the way to like May.
Wow.
So we don't have a lot of frustration, a lot of anger out there like we did. And that's good news. I think our property tax system does the people as well received around here. I'm sure they'd like it better, but they're not appealing like they used to.
Yeah, well, and nothing's for free, and we have a lot of really great services in Jackson County. For folks that don't know what the appeals process is, in the couple minutes we have left before break, can you speak to what that is and what it looks like?
I will. Back before 1997, it was called the Board of Equalization, because real tax bills were based on a real market value, and it was very important to have if you're on the same street with me and you have the same house, except and the same floor plan and everything, you would expect our real market value to be the same. In other words, both properties would sell for the same amount. So when equalization went out the window in 1997 with Measure 50, because R&V no longer is drives the tax bill. It's the MAV number, and the MAV number can deviate from you could be across the street from me and have a different MAV number than.
And what's MAV again?
maximum assessed value, and it's abbreviated MAV for maximum assessed value. So the board, they changed the appeal board from Board of Equalization to Board of Property Tax Appeals, and just this last legislative cycle, they changed that name again, and next year we'll be calling it something else. But when the tax bill comes out, the appeal process is spelled out with the tax bill, and the county clerk, Jackson County Clerk, Chris Walker's office, is acts as the secretary for the I'll say secretary, or the administrator for the Board of Property Tax Appeals, and actual petitions, appeals are filed with the county clerk's office, and then the county clerk contacts the people who are appealing and sets up a hearing. And the hearings are usually very informal. And lately the last couple of years since COVID, they've been done over by phone. So you don't even have to show up.
Oh, interesting.
You do it right from your house.
Yeah.
And there's no attorney required. And it's made, the board members are 3 members made up out of the public, usually.
So we got to take a quick break. I'm sorry, Dave. Hold that thought. This is really, really amazing stuff. We'll be right back after a quick word. Well, hey, Southern Oregon, welcome back to the Real Estate Show. I'm Alice Lema. I'm a broker here in Southern Oregon with John L. Scott Real Estate. And we're talking to one of my favorite people, Dave Arrasmith from Jackson County Assessor. He is the Jackson County Assessor. And we had to take a break just a quick second ago. And we want to go back and finish talking about the appeals process for your property taxes. You were just beginning to say about the commission and that they're local people.
Right. The board members, there's 3 that sit and at the hearing, and then there's a couple of 1 or 2 alternates that can fill in, but they need a 3-person quorum, and the board, so that when they'll take testimony, they'll take evidence, and then they'll vote on how to address, how to solve, whether they should sustain the county value, whether it should be reduced. They have no authority to raise it. The county assessor can't come in and ask for a higher value.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah, and the board is not made up of anybody out of the assessor's office or a county's or staff member. It's volunteers like yourself, and
oh, really?
As far back as I can remember, they've been all 3 of every year have been realtors or retired realtors.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so they know, or maybe once in a while we'll get an appraiser in there who just wants to, do a civic duty and help out. So people who are appealing, they're coming in, they're getting a hearing from a realtor, somebody who knows this area, who's worked in it a long time, probably even knows their property, and they get a very fair hearing. Yeah.
So I've been to some of those hearings, and they're really quite interesting. Are there standard reasons to lower somebody's taxes, or how individual is it? Like, what would a reason be?
Good evidence, good market evidence. If we have 100,000 accounts, and every year we have to change the value. We have to update those values every year. So maybe 4,000 or 5,000 of those values come from new construction. So our appraisers go out and visit that new construction, measure up the square footage, and set a value for it. Now, the other 95,000 accounts that aren't new construction, we have to update their value too, and we do that by trending. We do a statistical analysis of what properties were selling for last year in the year 2022, and compare those sales values with our 2022 tax roll. And if those sales are higher, then we realize we need to bring the tax roll values up. If the sales prices are below the individual sales, below their tax roll value, then that's an indication that maybe the that their neighborhood needs to trend down. So that trending process allows us to do mass appraising. But with mass appraising, it can have some issues where maybe we would come up with a different value if we actually had a few sales on that street and compared the property we were appraising to those sales. So what could happen at an appeal? The taxpayer, the property owner, could come in with and say, look, here's 3 sales of similar homes on my in my neighborhood, and so that would indicate that my value should be more like their value, and their value is less, so my property should have a reduced value. And staff would agree with that. Our staff would look at that and say, that's really good evidence. That appraisal technique is better than a mass appraising trending technique, and we won't fight it. It's good evidence. If a property owner comes in with no evidence, and their argument is simply their tax is too much and they can't afford it, the board can sympathize with that, but that's not evidence of what the value should be. And
yeah,
so ethically, they have to set a value, adjudicate a value of what the property would sell for, not what they think a reasonable tax should be. So,
and it's interesting because people want their value lower when they're living in their home, but then they want it higher when they sell it. You can't have it both ways. But it brings another question that the real estate agents get asked all the time is when they're buying houses that have features like extra rooms or more square footage or a little bit better upgrade, but it's not documented in the taxes, should they go and have the assessor come out and authenticate that it's different than what it says? Because it causes a problem if you don't when you sell it.
Well, really, if our value is not right, we all want to get that correct. So if they think our value that it would sell for less than what we have it on the tax roll, then I mean, even if they might have added square footage, even if they might have made some improvements, if after all of that work the value is less than what we have on the roll, they stand a chance to have it reduced.
Yeah, well, and that makes sense. It was the opposite. Yeah, like if they added a room and didn't tell anybody.
It depends on how you add, or I'll say it depends on how a person adds a room. If they took a large living area and made 2 rooms out of it, or took a large bedroom and made 2 rooms out of it, I guess you could say they added a room.
Oh, I see.
But and that wouldn't probably change the value. But if they add square footage, obviously a bigger house usually sells for more. So whether they added a room or if our square footage is in there and they tell us that their house is bigger, well then that would tend to cause a bigger value.
And it only causes a problem for the real estate agents later when they go to sell.
but let me throw this in there. Because I said, and I think this is a general statement that's true, and I'll just throw out a high number like 99%, but maybe it's 98, but it's still a high number. The tax is not based on real market value, it's based on maximum assessed. So if someone added a room and the cost of like say a laundry room or a deck or a mud room in the back or something, it's kind of a low cost addition.
Good example, yeah.
Okay. Then that would up their real market value. The property would sell for more because that's an added feature. I guess like adding a fireplace or something. However, that probably wouldn't change MAV. And because their tax bill is based on MAV, there'd be no increase in MAV beyond the normal 3%. So,
Oh, interesting.
yeah, one of the nice things about MAV, when I created it, they said new construction, new additions, new remodel, anything like that adds value, because it's new. If it's under $10,000, we don't increase. That's not a reason to increase MAV.
Oh,
And it can't, and so but it can't be like $10,000 every year. They put another limit on it. It can 10,000 per year or 25,000 in a 3-year period.
oh,
So
okay.
in 3 years, if you did 10,000 each year, the first 10,000 wouldn't be in addition to the MAV. The second year, that 10,000 wouldn't be in addition to MAV. The third year, you did 10,000. Well, half of that, 5, would be in addition to MAV, because they're limited to 25,000 over a 3-year period. So basically, if someone wanted to take a really, they had a long time ahead of them to build their house, as long as they didn't add more than 25,000 in a 3-year period, they could put that house up and not have a tax bill.
Well, yeah, if you do the math, but goodness, that's a long time to stay with your in-laws.
But I get questions like this, like, and not the lady of the house will say, I want some landscaping put in, or I want a fence put up, but my husband won't let me. I mean, it could work the other way. It could be the husband wanting the landscaping, and the missus doesn't has the argument against it. But one of them will argue against it because it'll raise their property tax.
Okay.
Well, if they keep that fence addition or the landscaping under 10,000, it won't. If we raise their real market value and said yes, so property should sell for more now, but if they kept that all those additions under 10,000, it wouldn't be added. That value wouldn't be added to MAV, maximum assessed, so there'd be no increase in tax.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's really interesting.
And then the lady of the house will say, "Oh, wait a minute. We're having a discussion."
Honey, we're getting a new pool. $10,000 at a time.
Yeah. No water the first year. We'll have water.
No water the first year. That's so funny. So we only have a couple minutes left before our break, and I wanted to kind of circle back to appeals, because you were talking about if neighborhoods went down, and the last time neighborhoods went down significantly was during the housing crash of 07 to 09, depending on your neighborhood. So how did the taxes work during that time? Because we did have a decline in value.
Yes, and it was very confusing to the public and to realtors and to real estate professionals, even attorneys. We took a lot of calls because remember, the assessed value is the smaller of real market value or maximum assessed, whichever of those two numbers is the smallest. So from 1997 until say 2008, real market value was growing, let's say 5 to 10% a year or more, but the maximum assessed value was only growing at 3%.
Ah, interesting.
So every year the spread got bigger and bigger between real market value and maximum assessed. So for instance, you have $100,000 value in 1997. If the real market went up 10%, that real market the next year would go from 100,000 to 110, and maximum assessed value was set at 90% of the real market value in 1997. So if you had a $100,000 house at 90% is 90,000. So MAV started at 90,000 and would grow to 96,000 the next year, where real market value went up.
Well, hold that thought. Dave Arrasmith, Jackson County Assessor. Great info. We'll be right back. Do not go away. Well, good morning again, everybody. Welcome back to the Real Estate Show. We're talking to Dave Arrasmith, Jackson County Assessor, and we just can't get enough of this information. We had to go to a break again. So let's have you finish your thought about how things were transitioned during the housing crisis of 07, 08, 09.
I think that's interesting because if we out in the future, if we had another housing crash, this would repeat itself. So in 1997, MAV was created at 90% of real market value. So if real market value was 100,000, say a bare lot or something, MAV would have been created at 90,000. That's 90% of 100,000. The next year, that 100,000 real market value could go up 10% to 110. The 90,000 MAV value could only go up 3%. So it would climb the next year from 90,000 to about 93,000. Excuse me, not quite 93,000, but somewhere if you did the 3%, it'd go up 2,700, I think, not $3,000. So it would be from 90,000 to 92,700. So the spread between real market, the second year went from the difference between 90 and 100. The second year now, the difference is between 93 and 110. The next year, the difference would be from 96 to 120. So that difference between real market value and maximum assessed value was growing. That spread was really growing. But in 2000, and so for all of those years, the tax bill was based on MAV, maximum assessed value, because that number was smaller. In 2008, the market started crashing. Real market value started dropping. However, that MAV number kept going up 3%. So people would call in and say, why is my tax bill going up when property values are falling? And that continued to happen for several years, 4 years maybe, until real market value fell below MAV. And when that happened, then the tax bills were based on real market value, not MAV. And that could happen again if we had a crash. And of course, when the market recovered, if real market value was down considerably below MAV, because there's no restriction on real market, say in 2012, real market could start climbing at 10% again. Well, then they could see a 10% increase in their tax bill because their real market value, their assessed values is based on RMV as long as it's below the MAV number, and there's no limit on how much RMV can change from one year to the other. It was confusing, and we tried to put a graph out with the tax bills that showed how real market value drops and how MAV value keeps going up, and during a recession.
Yeah, it's a very interesting economical anomaly, and we hadn't had it before. And I thought you guys responded well. It was a confusing situation, and now we have precedent. So right now in 2023, some people think that we've had some decline in values. The tax bills are coming out. Do you have any comments about values in Jackson County for this tax year?
We have about 110, I'll say neighborhoods. We divide the county up into areas that are kind of homogeneous and figured that those areas will rise or fall at about the same rate. And a good example, if we just had 6, if we just included like the cities, we'd have a Medford area and a Butte Falls area, and we wouldn't think those areas would climb or would appreciate or decline at the same rate,
as each other.
Yeah, they're different neighborhoods. So we try to fine tune it a little more. We have about 110 neighborhoods, and we analyze the sales in every one of those. And I think it averages out this year that on average the trend will be around 5%.
5% which way?
higher than the previous year.
So
Now,
everybody
that
thought
won't,
this
that,
year was
I
going to
said that's an
sink.
average, because it could
I get you.
be
I get you. I
10%
get
one
you.
area and 0 in another, and you'd have an average of 5.
But the fact that we have an average of plus anything is different than what a lot of us were thinking December of 2022. A lot of us were looking at 2023 ahead thinking we were going to have a decline.
Well, you know what, our analysis really falls behind, lags what's happening in the marketplace. Because we're looking, realtors are looking at today's sales and comparing them to last year's sales. Well, I can't use this year's sales to set a January 1st, 2003 value, and that's the value that's going on the roll right now.
Gotcha.
We're looking to set a value, hypothetical value. If your property, my property, sold on January 1st, 10 months ago, what would its value be? Well, to set that to set that opinion of value, we have to look at sales maybe during the last half of 2021 and through 2022.
I see.
And then we don't compare those to other house sales. So a sale to a sale, which is what you look at. Our trend is a comparison of a sales price that could have happened a year ago to a tax roll value, not a previous sales price. So we're looking at how to increase the tax roll value, where realtors look more at what was, ideally the same house sold this year as last year, and we can compare those two sales. Well, we're comparing a year-old sale to a tax roll value,
Which is different. Yeah.
so
Yeah. But
it's not apples to apples.
Yeah, now I understand. And I really like how you explain, and you're really good at this, Dave, of taking these complicated concepts and articulating them in a easy to understand way. And we really appreciate that. We only have a couple of minutes left, and I still have a lot of questions. Can we just zip back to the fires? Like how is all that going? A lot of the rebuild is done, I think.
Oh, I agree. I think there's been a lot of rebuilding, but I think there's still a lot of vacant land out there. And again, we'll have to get some sales before we can a property that didn't have fire damage and they're in that area. Is that fire going to affect them? I don't know. We have to have more sales, current sales, to see how that's going to go. And then for new property, new construction, well, the old value goes away. If the house value that was on there before goes away on a new improvement, the new goes on the tax roll. So there's really no way to. I mean, people would expect an increase, I think.
Well, and this is why we should have you on more often, so we could talk about this. David Arrasmith, Jackson County Assessor, thank you so much for your time. It was so educational.
Well, I appreciate being on, and I enjoy talking to you and any of the public that's listening. Thank you.
Yeah, you guys are always great. They answer their phone. You can call, you can ask questions, you can go in. Excuse me. So that's all we have time for today, folks. Have a beautiful Southern Oregon weekend. This broadcast will repeat tomorrow on this same station, KCMX 99.5 FM. And it'll be at 6 o'clock tomorrow. Have a great rest of the weekend. Bye now.